The courtroom cameras were already rolling when a case began that would feel familiar to anyone who had ever heard someone shrug off reckless behavior with the words, "It was just a prank." At the plaintiff's table sat Robert Keller, a small business owner, who looked like he hadn't slept well in weeks. His posture was straight, but there was tension in it. Shoulders tight, fingers interlocked, jaw set in a way that suggested he had replayed the same moment over and over again. He wasn't there for attention. He wasn't there for sympathy. He was there because something that lasted less than 10 seconds had disrupted months of his life. Across from him sat Ethan Cole, 17 years old. Hoodie pulled slightly forward, leaning back just enough to seem detached, but not confident enough to look fully defiant. His eyes moved occasionally, toward the table, toward the judge, toward the floor, but rarely stayed still for long. Every now and then, there was a faint trace of a smirk. Not bold, not obvious, but enough to suggest that somewhere in his mind, this still didn't feel entirely real. To him, it had been a moment, a joke between friends, something to record, something to laugh about later. To Robert, it had been something else entirely. Judge Judy looked down at the case file briefly, then raised her eyes, taking in both sides of the room with a measured, practiced calm. "All right," she said, her voice steady and direct. "Let's begin." She turned to Robert. "Sir, tell me why you're here." Robert adjusted slightly in his seat, as if grounding himself before speaking. "My name is Robert Keller, Your Honor. I own a small grocery store. Been running it for nearly 12 years now." There was quiet pride in that statement, but also fatigue. 2 months ago, this young man and a group of his friends came into my store. They walked around for a bit. Didn't buy anything, just kind of lingered. He paused, eyes briefly dropping to the table. Then he walked over to the wall and pulled the fire alarm. A subtle shift passed through the courtroom. Judge Judy's expression remained neutral. "And what happened after that?" Robert took a slow breath. At first, people were confused. The alarm was loud, sharp. It kept going. People started looking around, trying to figure out if it was real. He swallowed slightly before continuing. Then someone yelled, "Fire!" And that's when everything changed. His voice stayed controlled, but there was weight behind it now. People started moving, fast, not in an orderly way, just trying to get out. He glanced briefly toward Ethan, then back down. Carts were abandoned. A few got pushed aside. One tipped over near the front. There was a line forming at the exit, people trying to squeeze through at the same time. He paused again, this time longer. There was a woman near the front, older, maybe mid-60s. She was moving with the crowd, but not as fast. Someone bumped into her from behind, hard enough to throw her off balance. His jaw tightened. She went down, hit the floor near the entrance. The courtroom felt heavier now. She didn't get trampled, but it was close. People were trying to move around her. Some didn't even realize she had fallen at first. Robert's hands shifted slightly, unclasping, and then coming back together. I had to get one of my employees to help her up. She was shaken, scared, said her hip hurt. We sat her down until paramedics arrived. He let that settle before continuing. They checked her out. No broken bones, thankfully. But she left in an ambulance for further evaluation. A brief silence followed. Robert's voice softened, but it didn't lose its steadiness. "That moment didn't feel like a joke, Your Honor." He exhaled slowly. "We had to evacuate the entire store. Fire department came. Everything shut down. Customers left and didn't come back that day." He gestured lightly toward the folder in front of him. Perishable items had to be thrown out. Refrigeration was disrupted. We couldn't reopen without a full safety inspection. He looked up now, directly at the judge. "I lost a full day of business. Thousands of dollars, and I'm being told it was just kids messing around. Judge Judy nodded once, then turned to Ethan. Name? Ethan Cole, he replied, quieter than before. How old are you? 17. Judge Judy leaned back slightly, her gaze steady. Did you pull the fire alarm? Ethan shifted in his seat. Yeah, but it wasn't supposed to go like that. Judge Judy's eyebrow lifted slightly. Explain what it was supposed to be. Ethan glanced back at his mother, who sat rigidly behind him, her hands clasped tightly. We were just messing around. My friend thought it would be funny to record it. We didn't think people would actually panic like that. Robert let out a slow breath through his nose, but said nothing. Judge Judy looked directly at Ethan. You activated an emergency system in a public place and expected people to ignore it. Ethan hesitated. I just thought, I don't know, that it wouldn't be a big deal. Judge Judy didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned back to Robert. Let's talk about your losses. Robert opened his folder, this time more deliberately. I had to shut down for the rest of the day, about 8 hours. That's peak time for my store. Lost sales alone are a few thousand. He placed a document forward. Then there's inventory. Dairy, produce, frozen goods. Anything that couldn't be guaranteed safe after the disruption had to be discarded. Another paper followed, and I had to pay for a full safety inspection before reopening. Total losses come to just under $6,500. Judge Judy reviewed the documents, then looked at Ethan. You hear that number? Ethan nodded slowly. It wasn't on purpose. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. Intent doesn't erase consequences? This time the words landed harder. Ethan's eyes dropped to the table, his fingers tracing the edge of it absent-mindedly. Judge Judy continued. Walk me through exactly what you did? Ethan shifted again, but there was less resistance in his tone now. We walked in, looked around. Then I went over and pulled it. A pause. My friend was recording it. Judge Judy's gaze sharpened. You recorded it? Ethan nodded faintly. Yeah. Behind him, his mother's posture sank slightly, her expression tightening with visible disappointment. Judge Judy spoke again. Do you still have the video? A hesitation. Yeah. Let's see it. The shift in the room was immediate. Though no one said a word, Ethan pulled out his phone. For a brief second, he stared at the screen. Long enough to suggest he knew exactly what was about to happen. Then he handed it to the bailiff. The video played. The footage was shaky, casual, like something never meant to leave a group chat. Ethan and his friends entered the store, trying to hold back laughter. One of them whispered something off camera. Then Ethan stepped toward the wall, reached up, and pulled the fire alarm. The sound cut through the video instantly, loud, jarring. At first, confusion, people turning, looking around. Then movement fast, uncoordinated, urgent customers abandoned carts mid-aisle. A child's voice cried out in the background. Someone shouted for others to move. Near the front, the camera caught the moment, brief but unmistakable. The older woman, trying to move with the crowd, a sudden push from behind, her foot slipping, her body going down. The camera shook slightly as the teens reacted, not with concern, but laughter. Then they ran. The video ended. The courtroom didn't need commentary. The silence spoke for itself. Judge Judy looked at Ethan. You were laughing. Ethan swallowed hard. His earlier posture, casual, detached, was gone. I didn't think about it. Judge Judy's tone remained controlled. That's clear? She turned slightly toward Robert. The woman? She left in an ambulance? Robert nodded. Yes, Your Honor, just for evaluation. But she was shaken. It could have been much worse. Judge Judy turned back to Ethan. Did that possibility cross your mind at any point? Ethan shook his head slowly. No. This time, there was no defensiveness, just acknowledgement. Judge Judy let the moment sit. You called it a prank. Ethan didn't respond. Judge Judy picked up the documents again. This prank shut down a business, cost thousands of dollars, triggered an emergency response, and created a situation where someone was knocked to the ground during a panic. She set the papers down carefully. That's not harmless. Ethan's shoulders dropped slightly, his hands now still in his lap. Judge Judy leaned back. When you activate a fire alarm without cause, you create a false emergency. Her voice was steady, precise. People don't stop to analyze whether it's real. They react quickly, instinctively. She paused. And in that kind of movement, people get hurt. Ethan's breathing shifted slightly, subtle but noticeable. Judge Judy continued. And the fact that you recorded it, planned to share it, tells me this wasn't an accident. She held his gaze. It was a decision. Behind him, his mother wiped at her eye, her expression now openly distressed. Judge Judy spoke again. Do you understand that now? A longer pause this time. Ethan nodded. Yes. His voice was quieter than before. There was no trace of that earlier smirk. Judge Judy didn't look away, say it clearly. Ethan swallowed. I understand. Another pause. I shouldn't have done it. The words came slower, but they were real. Judge Judy nodded once. Good. She straightened. Judgment for the plaintiff. Robert exhaled, the tension finally leaving his shoulders. Judge Judy continued. You are responsible for the damages caused. The amount of $6,500 is supported by the evidence. She paused briefly. And I hope this is something you remember. Ethan kept his eyes down. Judge Judy's final words were calm, but firm. Real life doesn't stop because something seemed funny at the time. A slight pause. People don't get a warning before panic begins, and consequences don't disappear just because you didn't think them through. The gavel came down. Case closed. And just like that, something that began as a joke, 10 seconds of thoughtless action, became something far more lasting. Because what Ethan saw as a prank ended the moment the alarm stopped. But what it caused stayed with everyone who experienced it. And in the real world, it's not the intention that defines the moment, it's the impact.